morning, everyone. Thank you for watching Atlanta and Company. I'm Christine Pilara. Americans lead very busy lives, from work to family to finances. We often leave the safety of our nation's security to the experts. But just how safe are we? Brett Broughton is a retired federal agent with nearly 30 years with U.S. Customs Service and the Department of Homeland Security. He's recently completed writing Homeland Insecurity, Failed Policies, Politics, and a Nation at Risk. And he joins me now with more to tell us all about it. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Well, let's talk about it. I just briefly touched upon your background, but tell us more.
I started out as a customs inspector, grew up in Minnesota, so I was on the Canadian border. I became an agent, which is different from being an inspector, and had a career that went through St. Louis, Minneapolis, and ended up in Duluth, Minnesota. Saw a lot of things, heard a lot of stories. This book is a memoir of those stories and my views, my observations made during the course of my career, as well as what's happening now.
So talk to me about the inception of the book. Like, why now, at this point in your life?
During the working career, agents don't say a thing.
Right.
They live in abject fear of losing their jobs. So they spend a lot of time exercising their necks, looking over their backs to make sure no one's looking. So all those years we had conversations, and there's not a single person, I'm not the only one that knows this same thing. It's just that everyone is being forced to stay quiet. Everyone said during the course of my career, someone's got to write a book about this.
Right.
So after I got done, I put pen to paper, wrote the book, and I hope it resonates with the American public. I think they need to know.
And talk about what it is exactly that you're really kind of highlighting in the book. I know one of the things you talk about is 9/11, of course. And from the government's own findings, which agencies would you say actually contributed to the failure to stop the 9/11 attacks? And are we susceptible? I mean, I think a lot of us feel like we are safer, but is that in fact the truth?
The truth of the matter is a number of agencies contributed to the failure. I hate to say chief among them was the Immigration and Naturalization Service. They had opportunities to stop these people from coming in. At least they could have delayed it.
Right.
The 23 hijackers came in 30, 40 times with 364 aliases. They were never kicked out. In fact, Atta, just before the attack, returned through Miami where he could have been held out, deported, because he didn't have documents. Are we safer? Janet Napolitano just testified before Congress in July of this last year that we are susceptible to more attacks because terrorists routinely cross the border from Mexico into this country. We know what they're planning, but they're not being stopped because the border, honestly, is wide open. And that's really a continuing part of the tragedy that Americans just aren't aware of.
Right. Well, and let's face it, during election years, immigration, I think, is a very polarizing topic. And there are a lot of people that look at things that have gone on the way that immigration has tried to be thwarted in Arizona, and they think these steps are too strong. In your opinion, seeing what you've seen throughout your whole career, what do you think about that?
I was down on the southwest border in the late 80s with Commissioner Von Raab under the Reagan administration. The agents at that time told me, they said, we're under fire. We have Mexicans shooting at us from their side of the border, live rounds. We need semi-automatic rifles. At the time, I think they had 12-gauge shotguns. They certainly weren't armed with AK-47s, AR-15s, anything like that. They said, we need to have fully automatic weapons. That was over 20 years ago. Now we have casualties that are piling up. Jaime Zapata was murdered by Zetas, where he and his partner were stopped coming back from a meeting going back to Mexico. They had a road stop where the folks had to pull off, the agents. They identified themselves as diplomats. And unfortunately, when Zapata, who was driving the armored vehicle, shifted into park, the doors unlocked. So they tried to get the guns in through the doors, and he tried to hit the lock button, instead rolled the window down. So they shoved the muzzle of a rifle in and shot both of them. Oh, fortunately, the other agents who did survive managed to get the window up, and they continued to pump rounds into the vehicle, which none penetrated because it was armored. So to answer your question, the border has not changed. We have not changed. It's just we have new normals now. We have vast tracts of federal land that is shut down there where it's not safe. It's posted, do not enter here, because we have human traffic and drug smuggling. And we as American citizens say, well, that must be the new normal. So the book is just an assault on this new normal where we're saying we're willing to give a little bit more because we're told that's the way things are.
And do you feel like a lot of people, I mean, were you worried in any way about publishing it, thinking, is this something that's going to make people more fearful? I mean, I feel like we're already such a fearful nation, but, or is this really you wanted to paint a realistic picture of where we are still lacking in terms of security, where we are insecure?
Right. There's nowhere else people are going to read about this. I've been to a few events where American parents have said, we need to keep our children safe. Can you help us? Can you please help us? Tell us how we're supposed to teach them. This book is the start of it. This tells them the American government does not have your back. It's you and I that have each other's backs. We have to rely, first of all, on our family, on each other. We're going to get the job done without the red tape, without the stumbling and the mistakes that are made on a national level, and understanding at the same point that we as families have interests that are separate and distinct from what the government's motivations are to be in charge. We have the emotional attachment the government does not. So we have to be the ones that step up, get enough information to say this is where the weaknesses are. We can't control the borders,
right,
but you know, we can control what goes on within our four walls to keep the people within those four walls safe and coming home each and every night.
Do you talk about in the book, or what are your thoughts on about this new administration and about keeping us safe? If you know we're cutting our budget for national security, I mean, where does that? How does this all fit in? 97%
of the folks are the Border Patrol arrests 97% of the people on the southwest border. The latest motivation or latest swing now, latest strategy is to close border ports, border inspection stations, which are Border Patrol ports away from the border, 9 across 4 states. So in addition to leaving the borders open, they're cutting back the offices. Plus, the administration is telling John Morton, who's the head of ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, all you agents do not help state and locals enforce 287G, which is a hot topic, where police officers can ask someone who's been taken into custody on another violation, what is your immigration status? Now the agents are sitting on their hands, and they are now even suing Department of Homeland Security, saying, we're not being allowed to do our jobs. Right. This is the only way we can force their hand. And that's the state of affairs. That's where we're at. And
what are you hoping that readers take away from this? What's our call to action? You know, because we're going to read this and think, wow, we're feeling very insecure about the way things stand, about our safety, about our children's safety. So what can we do?
I've been asked that question. There are some suggestions for some of the larger political issues that people can do on their own. For example, if you know you're receiving a service where there are folks that are here illegally and they're doing your landscaping or something else, you just refuse to use that service. There's some common sense things. This is developing into something I hadn't anticipated. I suspect what's going to happen now coming out of this book, I will be offering seminars and training to parents to say this is how you can do it, because the questions that came at me were just plaintiffs saying we really need help. Right. Someone's got to help us. So I feel that in addition to that is looking at the schools. Quit teaching the kids to lie down and be standing still targets. Wearing Kevlar, you have the Kevlar backpack, put that on, but lay down, play dead, and let the bad guy shoot you. We instead have to concentrate on a strategy, which I don't know how many do, have an egress window, let the kids get out of the building and run, get away from the site. Because anyone who's been in law enforcement that goes to a firing range knows that if you increase the distance between your target and your weapon, the accuracy goes way down. These kids can move, they're small targets, get them out of the building.
Brett, interesting book. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And again, for more information about this book or to purchase a copy, log on to Homeland-Insecurity.com.